Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Ari Lax, and this week I talked about in my article that came out yesterday what I believe to be one of the strongest decks in the post-Eldritch Moon Modern, which is Eldritch Evolution Toolbox. And while I think that that's like the default deck to beat, I think that coming out of Shadows over Innistrad Modern and moving in, I think that this is the other deck that I think is quietly the deck to beat, and that is Death Shadow Zoo. So I've been talking about aggressive decks lately, and I've kind of touched a bit on how I think that a lot of them are going to get shut out of the metagame by Eldritch Evolution for a hate card. And one of the great things about Death Shadow is that there's not really a good hate card for it. So something like Kitchen Finks is a little too small ball. You can't really like get a Kitchen Finks or like a Loxodon Hierarch or just something of that kind of nature, where you just gain a bunch of life, Obstinate Bailoff. That's just not good enough because of the Become Immense Battle Rage combo. And there's not really like a hate card. It's not like Affinity where you can get a Kataki. So the big edge there is that, the hate cards that might work are things like Magus of the Moon and Angel of Jubilation that attack your mana. And that's why we play Lightning Bolt, because that kills both of those. This deck's just also very fast and capable of killing on turn 3 pretty reasonably without, your toolbox opponent's not going to be able to have removal most of the time, so you're just going to be killing them a lot of the time pretty much unopposed. So to kind of go through this deck, this is a deck that I forget when it first started popping out. I want to say about a year ago. I know I recorded with it last fall after Worlds, and it ended up getting played a bit at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch by both members of East-West Bowl and by Team Eureka. It kind of fell under the radar because of the Eldrazi decks just crushing everything. And then afterwards, Sam Black piloted it to a top 8 at Grand Prix Charlotte, and it's been steadily marching up the Magic Online metagame representation since then. I know there's been a lot of hype about Dredge showing up a lot more, but really this is the deck that's made the huge breakout after Shadows over Innistrad. And this is really despite, there's nothing different about it. It's just people are starting to give it the respect that it deserves. So what the deck's trying to do, the namesake card is Death Shadow, for those who haven't seen it. It is a 13/13 creature that gets smaller the larger your life total is. So you're trying to reduce your life total as quickly as possible and get into a position that you have a large Death Shadow that kills your opponent. So one way this is accomplished is the mana base. So you're, 12 fetches, no basics, all duels, and every single turn you are taking 3 damage to put a land from your deck onto the battlefield, sometimes 2 if you don't have a fetch land. So that's part of it. So that gets you part of the way to Death Shadow. The other part of it is your very heavy cantrip base. So you have Street Wraith and Gataxian Probe to put you down on life. You also have Mishra's Bauble. And Mishra's Bauble plus fetch lands form a big part of the deck because you're also this pseudo combo deck, and it helps you filter to what you want. So you like Mishra's Bauble yourself, and then if you like the card, you can crack a fetch land, or if you like the card, you cannot crack a fetch land, or you can probe into the card before cracking a fetch land. If you don't like the card, you can just fetch and then play your cantrips. Besides that, I mentioned a combo aspect. The other way you get your life total down is Mutagenic Growth, which is part of this Pump combo, the Temur Battle Rage Become Immense combo that was pretty prevalent in last standard format and has made its way into Modern in this deck. So you can imagine, Death Shadow when you're at 5 life is an 8/8. That's already enough to Temur Battle Rage for lethal, but Become Immense makes any of your other threats lethal and makes Death Shadow super lethal. Mutagenic Growth also really helps here because it effectively gives Death Shadow a +4/+4 bonus for the turn. So besides Death Shadow, you do need creatures, and that's one of the other great parts of this deck is you actually have to play real creatures that are good Magic cards. So Wild Nacatl, Monastery Swiftspear are 2 of the best 1-drops of all time, and you get to play those. In some games, you just get to be this pretty normal Zoo deck that just has Nacatls, Swiftspears, a couple Step Links, a Tarmogoyf, and just beats your opponent down. Always threatening combo when they don't, try and keep up. And then the deck also allows you to play some interaction. Another way you're reducing your life total is Thoughtseize, just one of the best cards in Modern in general. And you also have access to Lightning Bolt, just to kind of clear the way, pick off opposing things, finish the last few damage you need. Looking at the auxiliary creatures, so we said these are the greatest. Step Links is the only white card in the main deck. You do have white Sideboard cards that are pretty powerful, but It also plays very well with Become Immense Teamer Battle Rage. You can get in some pretty crazy situations with Step Links where you play Step Links, don't use your fetch land on turn 2, then on turn 3, you play another fetch land, you get it to landfall off that twice, so for landfall off the fetch land you'd save 6, and just a mutagenic growth, and that's 16 right there with a Teamer Battle Rage. So it gets into these pretty crazy ranges. However, it does fizzle out pretty quickly in your 17 land deck. It's not the greatest card to have, so cutting down from the original 3 that were in the deck, there's a Tarmogoyf in the list. Just another big creature, practically pre-boarding against some of the decks that you're trying to be more resilient against as well. Moving to the sideboard, a lot of good options. So there's creatures in a basic forest for the matchups where people are trying to grind you down or where you need something that doesn't die to Lightning Bolt. Hooting Mandrills has Trample, so it's naturally good with your pump spells. Become Immense. You could play Tassiger in that slot. However, the basic forest, pushes you towards lining up all your things. The basic forest casts Wild Nicodle and Tarmogoyf and your Mandrills, as opposed to just Death Shadow. So that's that. And also, you're not really likely to have a ton of lands in play with this deck. You only have 17, so getting to the Tassiger activation's a little dicey. You often board up Become Immense when you're boarding in Hooting Mandrills because you do have a limit on how much of that you can have. But for what the times you're not, Hooting Mandrills is also good with Become Immense because it has built-in Trample. You've got a Cage to beat Dredge and the Collected Company decks. Ranger Vios for further grindouts. So, this plus the Forest comes in against decks with Path to Exile specifically. So when they path your creature, you get a Forest, and then you can get your way up to a 4-drop, which then finds multiple, 4 or 5 power creatures. So, on a bad day, you have to get some 3 power creatures. But Stony Silence for Affinity alongside an Ancient Grudge. Phyrexian Unlife to cover Burn. You don't actually want to gain life against Burn, so conveniently Phyrexian Unlife actually keeps you at lower life totals. And you can actually Unlife Death Shadow up to crazy numbers and kill your opponent. Pyroclasm and Fork Bolt to kind of clear the way against smaller things, Affinity, Infect, Elves. A Natural State, just to kill random enchantments, including Blood Moon. As you'll notice, the main deck is not Blood Moon proof because your assumption is you'll just kill them. Some Inquisitions to fight combo decks and also fight Blood Moon, and a Dismember for larger things. So the sideboard is just kind of a bit of everything, which honestly is kind of a hallmark of pretty untuned and tuned modern decks. You go through this little trough where you found the 5 sideboard cards you think you want, and then you start realizing you're oh, I need to beat this, and then you find all these individual overlaps. So you've got this hodgepodge of things that covers everything. Whereas when you're just building a deck, you put in one of everything and see what happens. So this deck's pretty exciting. I think you're going to see a lot more early kills than you'd expect with it. And if you do not want to play any kind of toolbox deck, this is a great place to start looking and a great set of videos to start watching.